Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. We're thrilled to have you with us. My name is Jen Lawrence. I'm the Executive Director of the Hideo Sasaki Foundation, and I'm so honored that this group would come together today to learn from 10 months of design charrettes and experiences with the design grantees for this current cohort. So I'm going to go through the really quick who are we bit, and then we'll turn it over to the most important part. So let's go to the next slide. We were established in 2000 in honor of Hideo Sasaki with a bequest from Sasaki, who we are lucky enough to share space with, and a number of Hideo's friends and family members. He was an incredible landscape architect, an innovator, and an interdisciplinarian. So it was very important to him that there were many different fields of design together in one space working. And he created Sasaki in his name. So for many of you have heard this over and over, but we truly believe that design has the power to address our most urgent challenges, and that very frequently the people who need that access to design do not have access to it. So that is why we created the Design Grants Program in 2018. And we work with incredible community groups and experts to create some community-based designs. Our programming is in 3 tiers. We work towards, and actually, let's go to the next slide because I think it's laid out. We work in 3 tiers. We have research and experimentation, which is the design grants. We also work with the City of Cambridge and the Cambridge Public Health Department for their community health grants. We also do community learning and engagement, which is our public programming. You've probably seen our panel discussions and our workshops. We will be hosting a panel discussion with PowerCore Boston next Friday. And we have our professional practice and growth, which is design education. We have a couple of teaching assistants here. Each summer, we bring in a lot of high school students and a handful of college students who are working on their own designs. The high school students, it may be the first time they've ever heard that architecture or planning or landscape architecture is a field they could go into. And the teaching assistants are college students and graduate students who are mentoring the young people in what a design career could look like. So this year, our design grants program looked at 5 different fields or 5 different themes: creative community building, new models for housing, innovation in transit and access to mobility choices, innovation in health and well-being, and proactive approaches to climate adaptation. So what we're going to see today is 10 months of co-designing with designers from Sasaki, with experts from the community on a whole range of topics. You're going to see what their process looked like over the last 10 months, what they're hoping to do next, and the most important part, how you can get involved in the next phases of what they're doing. So the way this will work, it's going in alphabetical order by your project title. So not your organization name. Thus, you get to go first. And so there will be your slides. If you sent your own slide deck, we just used your slide deck so that we could make sure that the font looked good and that the clarity of the images was good. So Anna will bring it out for you. You have a clicker. You can click forward and back right here. Please speak into this mic really close. It feels uncomfortable. I will give you warnings if we can't hear you. And then once your presentation's over, you'll know you're next when your slide will pop up next. So without further ado, I will ask Kimberly and Taylor to come on up. Well, you're started.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. I'm Kim Lucas. I am at Northeastern University and
Hi, everyone. I'm Taylor Kane. I'm Chief of Staff over at the Boston Housing Authority, your neighbor just down the street.
we are so excited to talk about the work that we've been doing for the last 10 months on Early Educator Space 2.0. This is a second iteration of a project that's been ongoing since 2017, 2018, and we're so excited to talk about what it looks like to co-create green and open spaces within the West Broadway development within the Boston Housing Authority. So, yay. We walked into this project with a couple guiding questions. And as I mentioned, this is the 2.0 version. We learned a lot during our first version way back when in pre-pandemic times. And some of our guiding questions really stem from that learning, focused on how we better co-create spaces with young children and their caregivers in mind within the Boston Housing Authority developments. Our focus here is really about thinking about green and open spaces. In our first iteration, we really thought about in-unit design and what that could look like. And we realized we didn't have a ton of flexibility. But we also realized that green and open spaces bring a lot of different people, not just young children, not just their caregivers, into these spaces, and other residents, other folks, property managers, sometimes even local community members and neighbors. And so we see this as a really interesting opportunity to think about, like, what does it mean to co-design, co-create these spaces? And it's also an opportunity for the Boston Housing Authority, and Taylor can speak a little more to this, to think about what that looks like through their other developments. So this is a test case, a kind of prototype example of what does it mean? What's the toolkit? What's the kind of playbook that we use to bring this type of co-design process into other future developments?
Great. So where we started with the design grant process was first by taking a bit of a look at our larger public housing portfolio and asking a question around where are our family-based childcare providers. We know that we have around 30 providers across our public housing communities across the city, but we know that there are some sites that have kind of a greater collection or number of childcare providers. So we wanted to look a bit more closely at those sites and see if there was maybe one or two that would serve as a good kind of test space for us to build on. So we landed on the West Broadway community in some ways because it is very similar to our other public housing communities. And in some ways, it's really different. So it provided this interesting opportunity to ask some exciting questions that Kim was talking about. But West Broadway is a family public housing site in South Boston. It has a really vast array of courtyard spaces across the site, many of which are underutilized. They look pretty dated, but they are spaces where residents are spending lots of time. You can see some like concrete bench seating in one of the pictures. There's a lot of kind of trees on the site. You can see that people are biking at the site, and it's a site that has 3 existing family childcare providers who are operating businesses in their units, but it's also a site with a large number of children under the age of 5. So we thought that this was a good site to really focus in on. Just in terms of some other existing conditions, you can see that there is a lot of green space, but then we have these like fun little like I would call them tripping hazards, but like these fun little concrete barriers around some of the green space. There's some older play structure equipment that are in this kind of depressed area on the site. And then some of our residents who are operating family childcare businesses have gotten really creative in their use of space. And so this is one of our family childcare providers who has a bit of a like paved front lawn area that they've added some kind of artificial grass to, set up some seating. So we really wanted to focus on this site because there's so much existing creativity happening among the residents there to really take ownership of space. And wanted to do something that really amplifies the use of the space for family childcare providers, for young children, for their caretakers, and also other adults and other community members that are spending time outside. This was something really helpful that the designers helped put together for us that kind of maps out what the existing program of one of the courtyard spaces looks like. So you see that there is a lot of underutilized space existing. That kind of the main space that gets used is in the green, where there's kind of this existing play structure that's very teeny, but then there are kind of lots of underutilized spaces and then some gathering spaces for residents who kind of live in these buildings that are in this particular portion of the site. And then there's There is some existing landscaping, but it's pretty minimal. You see some trees, you see some areas where there probably used to be planting that there isn't planting anymore. So it was just helpful to get a sense of what does the existing lay of the land look like and how can we build upon what's there. So then what we did
is we engage the folks at West Broadway. This started as just like we started our 1.0 version of this with a lot of family child care folks throughout the city who are embedded, those 30 folks who are embedded throughout the housing developments throughout the city. And when we realized that West Broadway could be a really cool place to start and anchor this work, we very quickly realized like, uh-oh, we have to ask the task force. One of the best things about West Broadway is that it has a really open and active task force of folks who are residents, but also folks who are property managers and also community members. South Boston and Axion is an embedded community partner at this site, and they show up to the task force meetings and think about things that connect residents into the greater community and vice versa. And so we came to the task force and said, would you want this? Is this something that is interesting to you? How would you go about doing this? And they enthusiastically were like, yes, absolutely. And so at this point, we brought in our folks from the Boston Housing Authority, from here at Sasaki, from Northeastern University and Tufts University to really just be supports to them leading the design process. And so this is where, you know, it says engagement, but they were really engaging us and the resources that we're bringing to the table to really think about what their space looks like. We did a huge site visit. So we did a big walkabout with folks, and they identified specific spaces. So we have 4 spaces that they identified as potentially good sites to really start in on. And then we really kind of activated some of the spaces, like 2 of the spaces, to really think through like, okay, let's bring everyone out into this space and like now let's co-imagine what does this look like. That looked like bringing out a lot of like temporary materials, so exercise equipment, arts equipment, things that folks could draw on, plants, so that folks could envision what that green could be beyond what it is. And so that's kind of what that looked like. The other thing that we did was really think through, the idea is really thinking about generational use of space. And so really understanding, well, how do young children experience this space? And the best way that young children can experience this space is through play. Play is something that's useful for everyone, not just young children. And so come young, come old, come, you know, tall and short, come every size you can be, and like, let's play together in this space and imagine what the future and possibility could be. And so that's what we did. We had a pretty good showing, I think, a pizza party notwithstanding. And it was fun to learn also what people wanted in these spaces.
So through the design day, we got a really vast array of responses from the residents who came out. And I really want to stress that this is an intergenerational response that we got from young children, from their caregivers, from older adults. And we saw kind of a couple different tiers of interventions that residents were really interested in seeing on the site. And this type of kind of synopsis of what we heard from residents is really helpful for us at the Housing Authority to start to be able to make decisions and evaluations around, it sounds like residents are really interested in water features and splash pads. What does that mean for us from like a maintenance standpoint? And how can we not just create things that'll look really nice for that like first year of operation, but how do we really think about sustainable interventions in our green spaces on sites, which is a bit of a culture shift for us because we mostly focus on the buildings that we own and maintain as a housing authority. What was also interesting to see from this is that there's really a mix of kind of mid-level maintenance interventions that we could explore, as well as lower level maintenance interventions. And again, this comes back to kind of the capacity constraints that we have as a housing authority when we're struggling to kind of maintain what we already have. How do we create things that are going to be impactful for residents, but a low enough lift for us to be able to sustain over the long term. And so those can be things like arts and crafts, toys and games, things like a mud kitchen or hopscotch that we can maintain in the long term. And we really emphasized kind of elements that are going to meet the needs of the many different kind of communities that use this space. And I think one of the big learnings that we have is that this is just one courtyard among a collection of courtyards at the site. And so it kind of like freed us up to think about, well, we don't have to do everything in this one space. We can think about, okay, who are the communities that we can really serve in this particular location? And then how can we meet the needs of some other communities in different parts of the site? So this is just kind of a high-level snapshot of how some of the programming could be broken down across the existing space that we have. So really being intentional around what are areas where we really want to promote activity and activation by young people. So thinking about like kids spaces and kids zones, and then where are spaces where we want to think about kind of gathering options for the collective, for the community. I think one of the big takeaways from Design Day was that like even just putting out chairs, huge impact. Like that is a low lift thing that like we could do tomorrow, but has a really big impact on how people engage in space. And so when we think about this proposed program being really intentional about how are we creating different zones of activity for different communities will be really helpful for us. Great. And then we can kind of quickly go through this, but this is some recommendations as we think about the proposed landscaping of the space, because as you can see in some of these pictures, there's lots of green space, but it's not particularly accessible. People raised a lot of points around like wanting something beautiful to look at. And so this is a way for us to think about how can we enhance the natural beauty of this community. And then I love this one because this kind of gives a very kind of visual display of how this space could function, where we have these different zones. So a mud kitchen, a splash pad, some space for more kind of like an amphitheater, like theater type seating, different plantings, hopscotch, a play structure. And then I love how green this visual is. And then what we've learned, I think, oh yeah.
So just to highlight a few things, right? Like, I think the big takeaways from what we learned as we were working with the West Broadway Task Force, but also everyone they invited out, really thinking about promoting outdoor recreation and play. Folks are really excited to be outside. And when the outside environment supports them being outside, they're excited to be there and use these things, right? And so also thinking about nature as a guide for rest and relaxation. We heard this a lot in terms of like what folks wanted to see and feel in this space is not just active activity like go, 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 but like also a place for respite. And that goes across generations. And then finally, like really thinking about what does it mean to like make and do in these outdoor spaces, right? Again, it's not just about playing sports or being active or doing things like that, but also gardening, doing arts, doing crafts, being with and in community with one another. That was a really big thing that was salient across all of the different things that folks highlighted.
Okay. And our last kind of slide is where do we go from here? So in the short term, we're planning to continue collaboration with our amazing partners at Northeastern and really do some more in-depth engagement with the family child care providers on the site. And we're really excited to continue engagement with the Sasaki Foundation and think about that collection of green spaces on the site to really create a holistic vision for open space at the West Broadway community. When we look a bit like more midterm out, what we really want to try to do at the Housing Authority is really connect some of these design recommendations with our existing capital planning projects. We're already engaged in this process of trying to think a bit beyond the building envelope and think about our green spaces from a sustainability and climate resilience standpoint. So this really aligns with some existing work that we're doing at the Housing Authority. And then a big piece that we want to focus on is really getting feedback from site staff about some of these interventions, because ultimately they're going to play a really key role in maintaining them for the long term. So we really want to have their buy-in in this visioning process. And then lastly, this is kind of a long-term ongoing piece, but I think this experience has really given us at the Housing Authority a lot to think about when we're pursuing engagement at our sites, and thinking about how we present different options to residents about what could be possible in a space. So I think there's lots of room for us to grow in terms of reimagining how we think about engagement at a site level, kind of moving forward. And then just lots of thank yous are at the end. As Kem said, like this wouldn't have been possible without the involvement of the West Broadway Task Force. They are an incredible group of very engaged residents. We had a lot of support from management staff, from South Boston and Action. We had 2 amazing fellows that this work would not have been possible without. There were a number of staff at the Housing Authority who played key roles, and then as well as the City of Boston Office of Early Childhood has been a huge partner in this work going forward. And of course, the Sasaki Foundation enabled us to even be able to do this project. So we're really grateful for this opportunity. That's all we got.
That was incredible. Thank you so much. I just want to do a really quick shout out because I know they have to leave, but the design team is here from Sasaki and they were incredible. So thank you. If you want to raise your hands or stand up, they did such a great job and it was fantastic. Do we have any questions?
Was there any interest, consideration of combining those 2 greens into a larger green?
There was not, but that's an interesting idea. Yeah, we had kind of envisioned them as distinct spaces, but I'm curious like where that question is coming from. Like, do you think there would be value in considering that?
Coming together, right? This sort of central space where everyone shares, as opposed to, this is one side and this is the other side.
One of the things that did come up though, like at the outset, was thinking about connecting. So like, I think you may have seen like all of the different courtyard spaces and thinking about what the path and flow between each courtyard could be. And so like thinking about like, how do we expand what we think of as a play space or a young child space or a multi-generational space beyond just this one courtyard? We shouldn't all have to go to this one place, but like, how do we expand that to multiple courtyards and what does that look like in the future?
As an observer too, there's lots of kids biking through there. So it was kind of neat. And I know the design team thought a lot about people movement. Other questions? Incredible work. Thank you so much. So for this one, Armani is sick, so he could not be here today, but I'll give a really quick update on what he's doing and also a call for action because we also have a request from him. So Armani's working in the Survival Guide to Living and Staying in Roxbury. He is the executive director of Reclaim Roxbury. They're an incredible organization, so please look them up if you're not already aware of their work. They are currently in the process of building an online version of their survival guide. They're working with the Sasaki strategies team on that, and they're also working with an intern of the foundation to create a 3D model of Roxbury that they could have in their brand new location. So it's a really awesome project. The ask, if any of you have this expertise, is for some graphic designers. So does anybody have graphic design expertise and want to work with Reclaim Roxbury this year? They are awesome. They're just really great people in general, but I think the internship or volunteer experience, whatever you wanted to call it, it would be really wonderful. So that is the ask there. And let's go to the next one. Awesome. I'll just be up all day. So building food resilience through urban container gardening from the comfort of home. It's a really great project in East Boston. They had some staff turnover, so their board members were not available to come today. But they worked with designers at Sasaki to create some templates and some guidelines for how to create an urban garden within. If you've been to East Boston, you know there's lots of triple deckers. There's not a lot of outdoor space that was gardenable. So they wanted to be able to use the window space and the tight plaza space outside and courtyards to be able to grow. So they created a kind of like a toolkit to be able to grow food inside your home in East Boston. Now, yes, another question.
Great parking lot next to the future library that can use a garden.
Well, stay tuned for updates at the end of this. So next we have Lydia coming up to present for improving open space in Chinatown.
Okay, some people are not coming up, but should be. So actually, I did not do a lot of preparation, or nor did the rest of our team for this presentation. But because Sasaki did such great work for us, we're just using that report as our presentation. And basically, our project was to really look at what would it mean to improve open space in Chinatown, with a particular focus on the area from the DOT land that lies adjacent to Chinatown over to Hudson Street, where we have a vision for a library park. So we began the work by having, we actually had a series of charrettes to, where Sasaki people helped us really think about what could we do with these spaces. And to begin with, we were focused on these locations. So if you see, there's little labels, parcel 25, parcel 26, parcel 27, which are, all DOT owned land. And, oh, sorry. And then over to Hudson Street, which is where we have the vision for a library park. And there is an existing, sorry, I'm kind of disoriented here. Oh, yeah, right up there. So we started with our first charrette, which was really kind of like just starting to get people's input about, when we think about these spaces, what do we see as the opportunities? What's important to people? And this is like some of the input from that first charrette. Including, some ideas about what people were looking for. And then and then as part of our process, what we did was we did a little walk, a walking tour around the DOT land, because, we've all kind of like seen an overview of the map and we've seen certain pieces of it, but we actually most of us never walked through the entire area. So we did that together. And it was very eye-opening, because we realized how much land there is that DOT owns over there that's not being utilized. Basically, there's this huge oval that's just being used where some cars park around the the roadway, and that's it. So that became an important part of our process as well, and not and then, okay. And then we had our second charrette where we brought, I think, maybe about 30 people together, different sectors of residents and community organization representatives, to really do a visioning session, both looking at, there was a particular focus in looking at Regiwang Park, which lies over next to the steam plant on Nealon Street, but also thinking about the broader vision of those different potential spaces. And these are just some nice shots of the charrette activities. And so what we came out with was really kind of a vision of how we could strengthen the connection between different potential green spaces in the future. And the purpose of this visioning, it was not like this is something we're going to do in the next year, but we really saw the importance was that it gave us a longer term vision to work for that we could use in our advocacy, but that within which we could also work on specific spaces where we really saw the opportunity in the nearer future. So, you can see that, this was the big oval that I was talking about. That's probably a pretty long-term possibility. It's not like DOT is offering up, for us to utilize that space. So there'd be a lot of advocacy and organizing involved to get access. Similarly, the potential for covered green space that's kind of like around the Mass Turnpike, could be an extension of the city is involved in a planning process called Reconnecting Chinatown that's looking at green space, maybe over on that part, but we see potential on this side of Chinatown as well. So again, that's kind of a longer term advocacy. Whereas, there are some more immediate projects such as Reggie Wong Park, which some, community members have been working for a few years now in negotiating with DOT to turn that land over to the Friends of Reggie Wong Park, to do improvements. And the library park, which we see as kind of a medium-term opportunity that's, in the organizing advocacy stage right now. But together, we just think that, we need to think about them not just as isolated spaces, but also be advocating for the interconnection that needs to happen between those spaces. So this is extremely, I personally feel this was extremely useful. And I think, after I finish talking, maybe other people who are here from Chinatown and the charrettes that we've done can speak to, what you think we got out of this. But, it's really, as you see on the left under desirable programs, these are very real pieces that fit into this broader vision. With there is a proposal for the parcel 25 as a piece of DOT owned land that has already been assigned to a big developer who's supposed to be developing land space, but who promised that there would be a green space as part of that. If and when that actually moves forward, it gives us a better picture for what it is we want to advocate for, or how we might work to leverage certain resources from the development for our vision. Reggie Wong Park, I mentioned, is something we're actively working on now, and hoping to actually launch that redesign of Reggie Wong Park sometime next year. Parcel 27, again, I think it's a long-term advocacy challenge, but the future library parcel, Chinatown library parcel, is also, an organizing challenge, but one where we've made significant headway. So in December of last year, and then again, just last week, we twice defeated the proposal by Tufts Shared Services, which works for both the university and the medical center, to use this piece of privately owned land for a parking lot for the institutions. And, there was a lot of organizing that went on for the community residents, especially, to come out and say how much they did not want that to continue to be a parking lot. We also spoke to the alternative vision, although we didn't speak to that as much because that was not the subject of the hearing. But anyway, what resulted is that there no longer is a parking permit for that land. And I think a lot of people in the community are now ready to continue that work to develop the vision for a park instead and to get to the table with the church that owns the land so that we can actually advance that vision. No, they did. So at one time in the 70s, the church that owns the land had a permit for 12 parking spaces. Yeah, and then the church moved to Brookline in the 1980s, and the church facility was destroyed. But they continued to have the parking. But then what happened is they leased, since the church moved to Brookline, they leased that land to Tufts Shared Services to continue to use it for parking. And Tufts proceeded to park about 30 cars there. But it was originally permitted for 12 cars. And then because there was that discrepancy was one of the reasons for denying a permit in December, because they had been operating essentially illegally. I think that this process was really beneficial to the community because the overall vision, we stressed connectivity, safe spaces and connections, and the vision of having an overpass that would help us to connect those isolated spaces. We talked about public amenities, public art, expansion of recreational spaces where we just have, one kind of isolated court space today, and a whole variety of greenery and environmental concerns, and the potential for really thinking big about, what could be. And in our next phase, we are going to be actively working to move forward at least 2 of those spaces that were part of the vision. So thank you so much to the Sasaki Foundation and to the Sasaki team members who have really contributed a lot of pro bono time to this effort. And I'd like to invite you to stand up, those of you who are here, Zach and Tao, and yeah, thank you. Yeah, Gift did an amazing amount of work, and she's the project lead on the Reggie Wong Park now. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for the team from the audience? Great. Thank you for mentioning the designers. I was going to call them out. And a lot of these, you can see in the background, there were some drawings, and those were Zia wrong, and she's not here today. And now we'll bring up Vani from the INE Institute for Movement Training and Cultural Center.
Okay, I'm going to multitask. I don't know how I can do this, but give me some grace. My name is Vani. I am a lifelong resident of Revere, and this afternoon I'm really excited to be here representing the INE Institute. So our project at the INE Institute was the Movement Training and Cultural Center. But before I share what our project was, I wanted to share a little bit about the INE Institute. INE is the word reciprocity in the indigenous language in the Andes. And so in the INE Institute, we really believe one of our core values is reciprocity. And what we do in the organization is that we build equity and inclusion through training and development of social movement leaders and organizations. We build the capacity of social change leaders. So this is what we've been doing for the last 11 years. I'm excited to share that we have been as an organization for 11 years, and tomorrow we have a big event celebrating our INE-versary. So this is a look at the last 11 years. And a little bit more about INE is that part of our work is not just building capacity of social change leaders, but it's also to engage in an ecological revolution that reshapes our relationship with Mother Earth. This is mostly inspired by the leaders of the organizations who hail from the indigenous regions of the Andes. So here, I just wanted to share that to the far left is our executive director, Carlos Saavedra, who has brought in our elder to do some training in the last couple of years at the INE Institute. So a bit about our project. This is the exciting part. Y'all, I am a Revere kid who grew up in Revere in the Shirley Ave neighborhood, most under-resourced neighborhood of an immigrant city. And for the last 10 years, I've been working in community development, doing placemaking work, but I was a kid who just wanted trash barrels in my neighborhood. So for 10 years, community development, community building, I am burnt out, but I really love the hard work. So I met the INE Institute in the winter season of my life in 2022. I came on as an administrative assistant, which is a far cry from organizer, placemaker, urban planner. And I wanted to do good by my team because they're doing amazing work, training folks, but also just this whole concept of relationship with Mother Earth and just building in our dignity and reciprocity as we move in our heart work. So our project was this building that my team bought in, oops, where do I have? My team did a capital campaign in 2023 after 10 plus years of saying we need a place of our own. Originated our headquarters in East Boston. We said we needed a place of our own. So the team put their heads together, put an incredible capital campaign together and purchased a building back in my hometown in Revere. So we didn't have anything. And if you recall from pitch night, this building is a beacon to us, to you, to our community. And our project was, okay, we're organizers. We bought a building. We don't know what to do next. And we wanted to share with you that we didn't want to create another building that was standard cookie cutter or box. We wanted to be inspired with what we knew our people came from. And that's works all around the world of design. You know this at Sasaki, that the design doesn't have to be boring, it be vibrant, it could be modular, it could be all sorts of shapes and sizes. One of the inspiration we were looking at was of Freddie Mamani to change the face of our building to look like this. We were thinking like that. So I'll just walk us through what we were excited about. This is what our people have created. And we wanted to bring that to this little itty bitty building in Revere. This is just the inspiration of how we wanted to weave indigenous practice culture into our building, the exterior. So we applied for the Sasaki grant, looking to maybe do some design intervention. But the biggest design or environmental intervention that I've experienced through INE was the purchase of a building in a city that is minority majority with no place for folks to gather to do social change work. And sometimes maybe just shoot the shit and just have coffee and talk about change, right? So this is what we were thinking we're gonna do, get a building and do some outside intervention. That didn't happen. Throughout the process, I actually wanted to share one more piece is the Legacy Museum out in Montgomery, Alabama is an inspiration to the training and cultural component of the Institute, which was to really honor the work of our elders. So this is all what we wanted to imbibe in the exterior of our building, but we actually, through the course of our design project, shifted focus. So our design scope in winter 2023, after we received the design grant, we wanted to focus on the outside of the building. You could see it's 2 floors, huge parking lot. All that mumbo jumbo is to say we got a lot of place, but a place of our own. So we wanted to focus on the exterior. We had a garage, we had a 1st floor, 2nd floor, and this parking lot. A lot to deal with. A designer's dream, if you think about it, it's a blank slate. We bought this building in May, but May of 2023, but we didn't actually move into the building until February 2024. So our design experience had changed because it changed from what we thought we wanted in our building, and it changed because of our experience and the usage of the building come February 2024. So 3 charrettes later, through exploration and usage, it led to changes in the design focus. At our second charrette, we were inviting Sasaki into a building that we weren't really fully occupying. It's empty. It was an empty slate. And while it's exciting, we were organizers. We weren't thinking about like what is logistically possible. So it was really joyful and with profound like gratitude to have Timothy and Mauricio and Ricci and especially Jen to come and help not only get us excited about our project, but not to help tone down the overwhelming nature of design. So here it is. This is one of the floors of our building, pretty empty. We moved in still working on the interior of the building. We actually launched our first in-person training since the pandemic at this building. Still with nothing on the walls. We just set up chairs. We're good that way. We're really resourceful about using what's available and not just trying to overconsume. But we know there could be more, and we needed the help of our architects and designer eye through Sasaki's program to help us realize our champagne taste, but on beer budget work. So this is our first training. We have a partner, a co-partner, owner of our building is Nube Neighbors United with for a Better East Boston. They too use the space for training and events. So through being in the building come February of 2024, I, as a admin assistant, now turned property manager, now turned building manager, learned that there's a lot that needed to be done. So we shifted in conversation with Sasaki and our designers. The focus of the building no longer was this exterior, trying to create this indigenous form building, right? We wanted to focus on the inside. And we were able to share back with Sasaki, with their support, our focus being the second floor of the building, where we wanted to, this is the creative community part, we wanted to create a conference and team building space, much like the Sasaki building here. And we also wanted to focus on a building extension. So we were limited, as big as the space was, as brand new as this building is to us, there were some limitations. So at our third charrette, Rishi came over with Mauricio and Timothy, and we were able to hone in where we wanted to focus. Because what I learned from this design process is that you don't have to do everything right now. It can be done in phases. And as a newbie in this design world, we were excited to just vomit all our ideas onto paper, into Sasaki, and say, hey, can you make this happen? But the reality is we had to just focus on a few key things. So we're not done yet. So you're seeing some little rough sketches. We focus on the second floor because there's really the team of 5 of us, but we want to bring more folks into the team. So when they came, the Sasaki architects came, this is what we had to do, get down to the nitty gritty, which was see the layout of the plan. What was shocking was the building blueprint is actually not exact or not correct. And it was really great to have this alumni experience with the architects to physically walk through the building, find where the doors were. And this is what Mauricio and Rishi helped kind of flesh out. This means nothing to you, but what's important I wanted you to know is that you don't have to be an expert. You can lean on your supports. The designers ask good questions and simple questions of where their door was. We get so overwhelmed with design concept that we're not even thinking that the door is actually faced the wrong way. The placement of the door is important. I want to share this why, because on our first floor, I'll go back to this training. This is the bathroom door. Just having Rishi talk through scenarios of how we can expand our training space was incredible. He said to shift these doors to this door, that creates a bigger space for us to do our training. That allowed us to like suddenly increase our participation in training. And it was a simple change. It's changing these 2 doors to the opposite end so that this could be your audience is not facing the bathroom doors, they're facing like an actual wall, more training. So the that was a huge learning lesson for us is you don't have to focus too big, too big. It can be as simple as changing doors. So I wanted to share that. And I'll land at how we ended the charrette and how we're ending this phase of our grant, which is to say that while we are not focusing on making any indigenous Afro style building an exterior, we are considering extending what is our exterior building to add more. We're taking away parking space. I hope folks don't mind that. That is something we want to really be inclusive about, that not all our audience drives a car. So we thought, well, we were willing to give up parking space. And so we actually have, with the support of Rishi and Mauricio, extended what the building could look like if we added a deck, right? To really incorporate our relationship with nature. So there's a little bit more, but that's being fleshed out. And that's where we end with our design grant for this stage, which is to shift from exterior to interior, to focus on our team environment experience on the second floor, creating a conference center where folks can come in, but also have solo workstations for our team to do our work. And then on the exterior, it's giving us a blueprint, which we hope will allow us to take to future funders for a capital campaign to expand our work in order for us to do what we love best, which is training social change leaders. And on that note, I want to do a quick thank you from my team. This is who makes up our team on a day-to-day. We see everybody, including baby Iari. We just, for the last 3 weeks, converted our whole building into what feels like an art gallery, but because we have a big event celebrating our anniversary tomorrow, we wanted to have folks walk into the building and immediately feel like you are in a training institute by looking at posters celebrating people's history and change. And so with that, we want to thank you, Sasaki Foundation, but Jen and Rishi and Mauricio and Timothy for helping us and holding our hand through the overwhelming process to now making it a fun process, to know that we can actually convert this building into a building of not just our building, but your building. And I land with a sneak peek of, while we are not experts in physical design intervention, we've actually incorporated some of our indigenous design into the work. So you'll see some of the bookcases kind of emulate a little bit of nature, right, through trees. And then this is really special to me. So we were talking about a gallery of posters to celebrate people's history. This is the shape of a chacana. Chacana is a logo for the Aini Institute. The chacana actually represents the star out that is only visible to the Southern Hemisphere. It's a 4-point star that is part of our logo. And we wanted to embed that piece of our indigenous history, not force it into the building, but that it's a way to really honor our ancestors and where we're coming from. So as folks come into the Institute, you'll see instances of the Chicana and natural design. And so my invitation to the team here today is, we don't know what we're doing, but we're open to sharing and learning, because the Chicana says that we're related and that we're interconnected, not just as human species, but we are interconnected to the natural order. And so if you have interest or knowledge about landscaping, or you want to do a little bit more around building out conference and social centers, and that's your thing, we welcome you. But even if you don't want to do work, we also welcome you to come just hang out with us. And if you need space, if ever you're in Revere and you're hosting an event or a meeting, you can book a meeting with me. And that's it. That's our design experience. Thank you so much for your time.
That was incredible. Thank you so much. Hold on one second. Let's see if there's any, Vani, let's see if there's any questions. I knew it. Here you go.
You weren't letting me off easy. Okay.
In some of your slides, you showed indigenous buildings that were tower-like in a high space. And you also talked about the relationship to nature. So in your consideration of an addition on the second floor, have you thought about raising the roof of that addition so that there's a two-story space with tall clear-story windows so that the volume is more of a sort of gathering, a community gathering space, but at the same time, you get a better view of the sky as opposed to being these compressed lower ceilings, right? And you're just looking horizontally as opposed to seeing more daylight.
Yes, we definitely are considering that. So you saw towards the last end, just a snippet of what that extension looks like. The architects are looking to share some options with us for consideration, and it includes building up to the rooftop. I didn't share this because I don't know if it's fully announced, but I'm really excited that while our grant opportunity has ended for this part of the work, Jen and Sasaki team has offered a student from the SEED program to help us take the blueprint and do a little bit more digging on what's feasible. So we don't know how high our building can go up. It's actually formerly a residential area, and our building is in a non-conforming use building in that area, so we don't know what's available, but we have are interested in a rooftop. I personally am interested in a rooftop gardening and any type of gardening, but that is that's a hope, but we're only limited to what we don't know.
Any other questions?
Um, I'm curious about like, just because like I know in the beginning you were all about external, very colorful external, but now like coming inside the interior is like, what have you all like thought about like when it comes to the use of color and how you're going to be implementing that on such a big building with so many rooms?
Yeah, so through this process, I learned that it's sort of like organizing. You move at the pace of folks who don't know a lot, the most, or the least to the most. And so these decisions cannot be made by one. We really go through it with the whole entire team about color schemes, and even planning for our anniversary, we were really intentional about making sure that we had a palatable color that would be agreeable to our other co-owner of the building, and we want vibrancy, but we're like, well, we have other things to consider. We don't want to overconsume and buy one purpose or one function. We really want to make not only the building, but the items inside the building multi-purpose. And so we steer away from really, really vibrant colors to something that is allowing us to be modular and adaptable. So that's kind of the approach of a lot of the color conversations we've had in outfitting this building.
Anything else? Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. And that brings us really nicely into what's happening with the Sasaki Foundation next. And also, I will just make a quick, I don't think we have a slide for this, but we are going to be working with two teams this summer, sitting right next to each other. Early Educator Space and the INE Institute are both going to be hosting a Seed 3 student this summer with Sushil. And the really cool thing about that is it was the students that came to us and said, hey, we've done Seed 1, we've done Seed 2, we've done all of these things. We're going to design school in the fall, and we want to learn more about client management and project management. So that is super exciting. That's why when you see the end of their projects, there's still a lot. It's and, because they'll still be working throughout the whole summer. So that's very exciting. Okay, so now design grants moving forward. We just had our 2024 pitch night last 2 weeks ago, and we're all very tired from it. It was fantastic. We had 7 finalists. You can see them here. And for our next series of design grantees moving forward, we will have Gardens for All with Sociedad Latina, and they're going to be working on a design guide and workshop series for community members, and they'll be talking about gardening. And that was youth-led and youth designed, so we're very excited to be able to bring that piece of our mission into design grants. We'll also be working with Inclusive Four Corners as they try to translate and interpret the Squares and Streets program of the city of Boston and figure out how they can then share that knowledge with their community so that they can better navigate not just Squares and Streets, but all city planning processes. And then, of course, we are so excited to be working with planning for a Chinatown Library Park. As was alluded to a number of times today, they will be working through what that design might look like in a very similar process to the why can't I think of words right now? Reggie Wong Park, but also the interconnectedness of the open spaces in Chinatown. So congratulations. We're so excited to be working with these three teams in the upcoming year. And what do we have? So we've got our seed three interns will be working with these projects. We also have a third intern who is working with Melissa Tang, who was a juror this year for design grants, but also was a grantee last year. And they'll be working with DS4SI. And in the fall, we'll be publishing the design grants research publication from this current cohort. So we will be bugging you over the summertime to get us some information. We'll do it late enough that we can get all of the stuff for the summer teams. And then the 2024 design grants cohort kicks off in September. So we are very excited for this. And last but not least, we've got a couple of upcoming events. Next week, if you haven't gotten enough of us, and if you want to see the rooftop, talking about rooftop spaces, it's not quite a rooftop garden, but there are garden spaces up there. We have our Emerging Professionals Trivia Night upstairs. It's a fundraiser for us and the BSA, the Boston Society for Architecture. Thursday, 6 o'clock. Registration starts at 5:30, so come on over. And $30 makes a donation to us and has pizza and drinks included. And then next, we have ways for you to engage with us. So for all of you folks online watching this later, be sure to click the link if you would like to join our matching program. This is the first year that we're trying this out. We have a government match, and usually we just get a couple of big donors. And this year we said, why don't we do a more of a mentorship model? So if you sponsor our internship program this summer, we will be hosting a lunch in the middle of the summer and inviting you to come to both the midterm presentations by the students and the final presentations. So you can really start building relationships with the young designers. And then finally, last but not least, don't want to give money or don't have money, we will also take your time. And we would love to provide some more mentorship opportunities with our young professionals this summer. And I think that's all. So thank you so much for being here. I chose to end out our day on the microphone that we didn't check the batteries on. That's why it keeps going in and out. Thank you all. We really appreciate the last year of work, the partnership, the collaboration, and the trust that you have in working with us.